More bad news for President Biden. 47% of Democrats now say he should step aside as the nominee, according to the latest polling from YouGov. 13% were unsure, and 39% said that he should not step aside. His results were worse for Democrats under the age of 45, a clear majority of whom want a different candidate.
Even so, members of the Congressional Black Caucus are rallying behind the president at a time where he needs it the most. After several congressional Democrats called for President Biden to drop out, Biden held a virtual meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus, one of the most influential groups in the House Democratic Caucus. Biden reportedly told caucus members at the meeting, quote, "You've had my back, and I'll continue to have yours." And following the meeting, several members reiterated their support. Not one spoke up against the president. Take a listen to Democratic Representative Maxine Waters.
But I do want to tell you how strongly I feel about support for Biden, how I believe that this Democratic Party will eventually come together. We don't have that many members who are talking about he should step down. Don't forget, there are 213 Democrats, and you talk about 9 members, and I don't think we have a long way to go. We're not really divided. And so I am hopeful. And I do believe that we're going to be fine. And I do believe that Biden is competent and capable of being and continue to be the president of the United States of America.
Similarly, Democratic Representative Frederica Wilson said, quote, "Any leader calling for President Biden to drop out needs to get their priorities straight and stop undermining this incredible actual leader who has delivered real results for our country." Freshman Democrat Gabe Amo said he will be in Biden's corner precisely because of his track record of fighting for hardworking Americans. And one of Biden's most prominent black allies in Congress, James Clyburn, also repeatedly expressed his support. Let's watch.
Was there conversation about Vice President Kamala Harris in there?
We are riding with Biden.
You're still not.
Clyburn said previously he's behind Biden, but is open to embracing Vice President Harris should Biden step aside. And for context, here, black voters helped send Biden to the White House in 2020. Then he won 92% of the black vote, but polls have since shown Biden consistently losing ground to Trump among black voters. A New York Times Siena poll shows Biden currently winning 73% of the black vote, compared to Trump with 15%.
Well, they're riding with Biden. That's what Clyburn said, and he has always been able to draw on his base of African American support. It's his most dependable base of support, like I just said, and he needs them now, and they are signaling that they're standing with him.
Yeah, it's interesting because there would be no Biden presidency without the CBC and black support. In South Carolina, they rebirthed that campaign and really led to his victory. But given what's at stake, when we start to talk about the rolling back of the Civil Rights Act and things like that, it puts CBC members in a precarious position because they're backing Biden full-throatedly. But when you look at the poll numbers, it looks like he would lose that race. Right. And should he lose, the rollback and effect on the African-American community would be devastating.
I mean, it is kind of interesting that his most likely successor replacement would be Kamala Harris, a black woman. And I totally get it that just because you, surface level skin deep have that characteristic does not mean you are well liked.
Yeah, Tim Scott isn't getting supported by the CBC.
Sure, I get that, but it's still, nevertheless, it's interesting that this is the most loyal group of people to Biden.
To a white guy. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah,
the CBC
when
is
the replacement would be a black woman who seems like she would at least have a somewhat slightly better, might not be, I don't think it's a massively better chance of defeating Donald Trump. I think it's a better chance than Joe Biden at this point.
Absolutely. And when you look at the optics, I mean, you have someone who is younger, who would, I think, excite at least a younger base. She's African-American, so you start to lift those numbers up. Look, if Trump is at 15%, if he's at double digits come November, Democrats are not, he's just winning. Democrats are going to have a wipe-out night. Right. And so the effects of this race aren't just at the top of the ticket. We're looking at down-ballot races, and that's really where I think you're going to see the worry.
Yeah, and his defenders keep saying that, this is a distraction because Trump is such a threat to black people, minorities, women, gay people, blah, 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 blah. But then the critics are saying, well, yeah, because of those things, we want a different candidate.
Yeah, it's also going to be interesting. I think this plays a unique role in gerrymandering. If you think about the people who are coming out against Biden staying in the race, it's people who are in safe districts. It's the moderates who are really in these districts that are swing districts who are coming out and speaking up. A lot of the CBC members, their districts have been gerrymandered, and so their seats are safe. And so there really isn't a lot of incentive politically for them to come out.
Right, even though many of those members are somewhat more moderate, it depends on the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Black people overall as a voting bloc are more liberal than the rest of the, are more likely to be Democratic than the rest of the nation.
But
within the Democratic Party, they're more moderate, they're less liberal, they're more conservative than white people within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and I think Democrats often get that wrong. Anecdotally, I was talking to my Uber driver yesterday, and one of the things he was talking about, he is a recent immigrant to the United States, and he talked about how Democrats are really missing the mark when they talk about, just normal day-to-day things, that a lot of the PC police things have kind of driven him away. A lot of the anti-family,
the abolish the policers.
Yeah, he agrees with the broad.
You can't find a minority taxi driver anywhere who wants to abolish the police. You can't do it.
No,
I challenge you to.
No, and immigration is something, and as someone who is an immigrant, is something that he worries about. A lot of the worries aren't about the broad democratic principles, but it's kind of where the party's turning right now.
Yeah, it's an out of touch characteristic of Democrats that they've been trying to shake for a long time. And Biden was the one to do that with his more normie kind of approach, and his
he harkened back.
He's old. He doesn't seem to be uber culturally progressive or alienating or someone who's going to use PC language in a way we find obnoxious.
Yeah.
Now his grasp of the English language is such that you're right, it's not capable of offending us, it's just also not capable of reassuring us.
And him not being able to be his best kind of marketer, be his best spokesman, I think is the biggest problem. Because now, every day that he's not on the campaign trail, every day that he's not giving speeches, people are gonna really kind of reiterate that notion that he can't make the case for himself. Yeah. But when you put him in front of the camera, every opportunity is a huge risk for Democrats.
Well, as I pointed out with that poll at the beginning of the segment, the only group of Democrats who now think he should stay in the race is fellow elderly Democrats, or at least the 55 up category. As it gets older and older, they had some age categories. Older and older, they're comfortable with him being in that position, which is not actually a necessarily intuitive result to me, because it could have been perfectly plausible that actually fellow old people would say, yeah, I have no business being president, neither does Joe Biden, but that's not what the poll suggested.
Which, I was more anecdotal. I was talking to my parents, I was talking to my grandparents, or my grandmother rather, and at first she was really defensive of Biden. But when you kind of got to that second layer of questioning and you're talking about the age dynamic and would she feel comfortable being president at that age, she acknowledges none of her friends in their 80s are really at a point where they should be handling national crises on the day-to-day. But also, there is this natural defensiveness, but once you get past that, she even admitted that what she has seen so far doesn't make her comfortable heading into November. And so I think it gets back to that, what you're hearing privately is completely different from what you're seeing publicly.
My grandmother does not think Joe Biden has any business being president, but nor does any other Democrat in her mind.
No, but they all will say he's a good man, but just the time has passed.
Yeah. All right, we'll have more Rising right after this.